Okay, before we kick off the session, I'd like to welcome everybody for joining our second Intelligent Automation Forum, South Africa. So I'd also like to thank and welcome our committee members, Ninel and Simone, who will be running everything behind the scenes, and Johan, who will be our moderator. So before we go in, I think maybe we do have new attendees to the second session. I just need to give context as to why have we started this Intelligent Automation Forum. So this is a forum that is run by industry for industry in order for us to network with our peers and share the knowledge and experience that we have in our various organizations, because I think sometimes we tend to think that all the pains and the bad and the ugly and the good that we're experiencing, we are alone in this, but actually we're not. There's a lot of us that have gone through different types of pains and experiences that if we share it, I think the load could feel a bit lighter. So before we go into the detail, I just want to go over our code of conduct, and that this forum was created as an opportunity for senior practitioners to share their knowledge and experiences. So the reason why we specifically chose seniors is because we want to be able to shift the game and elevate our ways of thinking and implementing intelligent automation in South Africa, because there's a growing increase in digitization in all of our industry, in all of our organizations and industries. So it is important for us to actually see how other industry players are doing it. So we've got a small steering committee that's been established to arrange all of that logistics, and attendance is by invitation only to ensure that we have the appropriate level of seniority and therefore the quality of our conversations is maintained. So one of the things that we realize that we don't want for this to be another session where we've got a lot of people in the room and only one or two people are actually contributing. We need for us to have meaningful engagements and have people that we can call on and lean on that are also at our level and are able to elevate the game based on all of our different experiences. So the consultants and vendors are actually welcome, provided that these sessions are not used in any way to promote sales. We want to ensure that the conversations can stay open and honest, focusing on learning on our experiences. And then I think because we all use different vendors, I actually know for a fact that we are all experiencing the same types of pains in the processes that we implement. So I think from a vendor perspective and even consultants, this is an opportunity for them to actually learn how their customers are potentially experiencing them. And I think it will also help them give us better service when they are service providers. The number of the attendees per organization will be limited to 3. So please coordinate amongst yourselves within your organization to identify the appropriate individuals to attend. Because at the end of the day, we don't want our session to be skewed towards one particular company or industry. So we want to have a diversity of industries and individuals. And topics for these discussions are selected by vote. So we would like for you guys to make those recommendations in terms of what we would like to talk about going forward. We've already had our first session where we spoke about intelligent automation. That was the evolution of RPA. And now we're going to be talking about the good and the bad and the ugly of RPA. So I'll hand over to Johan to take it over from here.
I see a whole lot of people on the call, a lot of people who work in the trenches, if I could put it like that. I also see a number of consultants and also people from some of the RPA providers. What we are going to do for the next 15 minutes is I'm going to run through the list as I see it from top to bottom. I'm going to call out your name. If you're comfortable to speak, please come on camera and for just 1 minute tell us who you are and about yourself. If you don't appear on camera, I would assume you don't want to, and that's also perfectly fine, although we would like to encourage that. So remember, keep it short. But firstly, let me call on you, Adi. Welcome. Please tell us about yourself briefly.
Hi, guys. My name is Adi Hazan. I have a company in England called Delegates. And what we're trying to do is make it easier for people to take good decisions on RPA. So we make a no-code AI, but that's my last punt for the day. I'm really here to see if we can solve problems together. There are a lot of corners in process automation which are sticking points. We've all got these bones stuck in our throat. So let's work together and let me try and help wherever I can. Thank you.
Fantastic, Adi. Thank you so much. Angela, Nadia, if you are comfortable to come on, please say hi and tell us who you are.
Hi guys, I'm Angela Nuday. I'm from MultiChoice. I am an innovation specialist with the team there. And part of my role is to play the role of business lead on our RPA projects.
Next up is Candice Skeppers Erasmus.
So I am the Retail Integration Program Lead at Massmart. And given the current changes within the organization, I'm responsible for the retail leg and ensuring that from both a business as well as a technology perspective, that we position the organization in such a way that we're leading in the area of automated intelligence and processing of data.
Chet, you are next.
I head up the automation business at a crowd called I1 Solutions. You know, for us, really just to learn today, and as one of the speakers said, really just to help customers solve problems, because I think that's really where you know, that's our value add.
Next up is David. Welcome.
Yeah, morning everyone. Name's David Harrismith. I run a company called Moneyvation, which stands for Monitoring and Innovation. And what we've built is a solution called a Digital Compliance Officer, which is essentially a digital brain that handles regulatory compliance for organizations.
Derek, good morning.
My name's Derek Walsh. I run a company called RCT Intelligence, and we really specialize on two parts of data and information. That's machine learning and RPA.
Gavin.
Yeah, hi, morning everybody. I'm Gavin Beckett. I'm solution architect at DigiBlue. Been involved with RPA since 2016 full-time, and obviously more recently in intelligent automation.
Next up, Goodness. Good morning.
Name is Goodness. Currently heading up the digital technology division within the ATTAC space. If you don't know ATTAC owns the Waterfall Precinct, where Mall of Africa is based. So yeah, been involved in a lot of RPA implementation.
Next up, Johan Marnovic. Good morning.
I'm the solutions architect and automation technical lead at I1 Solutions. As Chet introduced the company a little bit earlier.
Catherine?
Yes, good morning everybody. I'm Catherine. I'm the RPA automation lead for Westbank. So I'm really looking forward to, speaking to everyone again today.
Next up, Julian.
My name is Julian Miraj, and I work as a senior manager for IQ Business in our technology enablement team.
Lynette.
I'm a business analyst at Sanlam at the moment, implementing hopefully a project very soon, automating premium allocations.
Next up is Marilyn.
Morning, everybody. My name's Marilyn Leonard. I represent a company called Expertech Contacts. We implement RPA solutions across various industries.
Next up, you've already seen Ati. She's one of our organizing members. But Ati, maybe just a quick hello and tell us about you.
All right. Hi, guys, again. I'm the group executive for a department called Digital Process Reengineering. So Vodacom, my group function spans across South Africa, Lesotho, Mozambique, Tanzania, and the DRC, and soon Ghana and Safaricom.
Next up, Nick.
Morning, everyone. My name's Nick. I'm coming to you live from Allan Gray here at the waterfront in Cape Town. I'm a business analyst responsible for our digital client experience.
Next up, another one of our organizers, Nanelle.
And so my name is Nanelle. I know most of the people on this call, have had the privilege to work with most of you at some point in time. Nice to see everyone here. And this was a dream of mine to get this going for a long time, and very happy to be here. Thanks.
Next up, Paul.
Hi, the name's Paul Bull. Long history around process improvement, systems implementation, all that kind of stuff. From an RPA point of view, got involved with RPA in early 2018.
Next up, and we're almost done with our list, Rainier, good morning.
I'm the delivery head for Intelligent Automation Department at Germany Tangent Solutions. I've been in the RPA space for the last 3 years. successfully implemented over 70 projects and 2 COEs for enterprise customers. It's been an exciting journey, learned a lot, still facing a lot of challenges, but it's exciting, and it's exciting because the people are adopting it a lot of customers out there for all of us to work with and assist, and hope I can help with my experience and with the rest of us, to identify some issues and come up with some solutions.
Good stuff. Thank you, Sean. So Renier, next up is Sean. Good morning.
I'm Sean Robertson. I'm the Vodacom Group Lead Architect for RPA. In Vodacom, we've got about 100 bots running, a few more processes than that. So we've seen the good of RPA, but there's also the bad and the ugly side of it that I'm curious as to how the industry is handling it.
Rudolf?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rudolf van Rensburg. I'm the CTO at Treasury One. Introduced RPA into our business in 2017.
Simone, who's also one of the organizing members. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're well. I'm Simone. I'm at IQ Business. I'm running the process competency for IQ Business, and in one of those streams is RPA. So we're looking at RPA, anything automation.
Simone is also with Nanelle driving the train in the background for this call, or this meeting rather. So thank you and good luck. 2 more to go. Stefan, good morning.
Hi, Johan. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm from Automation Anywhere, obviously a technology company, and really looking to learn a little bit more, outside of the technology questions, a little bit more around the other questions like how our customers and stakeholders across the industry manage, for instance, people and process, and setting up of COEs successfully. And I think all very much in line with the topic for today. So really looking forward to the session.
Good. Welcome, Stefan. And then lastly, Steve, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much. Excuse me. I'm Steve. I'm the founder and CEO of DigiBlue. We started in RPA we were a consulting firm that moved exclusively or wholly into RPA in 2016.
We are going to move on to our main session now. I would like to introduce the 2 gentlemen who is joining us for the main panel discussion. And if you can both come on camera, please. Let's, Andre, start with you. Just tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been doing RPA now for the best part of 4 years. I think just speaking of myself, I've dabbled in the beginning half of my career in management consulting. I think the latter half of my career has been in banking, and then the last quarter or so has been purely in the automation space. So I've lived the journey. I've got the scars or the badges, as Rudolf puts it, for the last 4 and a bit years at Nedbank. It's been an interesting ride. I'm happy to share some of that today.
Fantastic, Andre. Thank you. And then Kushil, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Kushil Amrital. I manage the applied intelligence function at Old Mutual, which encompasses robotic process automation, the AI Center of Excellence, the behavioral economics competency across the group, as well as an R&D kind of flair across those competencies. I think we are 3.5 years old in terms of an automation center of excellence. It's part of the starting capability with 6 other engineers in 2018, and we partnered with DigiBlue back then as an implementation partner to really scale out our workforce. And I think we did so quite successfully and really rapidly. There's been global recognition from Blue Prism in terms of some of our robotic operating model excellence, as well as more recent recognition from a customer excellence perspective. Our robotic workforce, we're sitting at around, I think, 208 bots that span across various parts of the Old Mutual Limited structure, primarily in the servicing business, so back office automation, like Steve mentioned. But we are expanding into other functional areas in the business. A large focus of mine for the past year or so has been partnering with Microsoft to develop our AI Center of Excellence, which is really the complementary technology to Blue Prism, having understood, some of the, I guess, the constraints that really rule-based automation presents. So really trying to complement the newer technologies that sit on Azure and AWS and Google Cloud Services into our robotic framework, and then overlaying a behavioral perspective onto that so that we try and drive improved value chain design, improved business process automation as well. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. 2018 was a year of scars and school fees that were paid. And I know, Andre, we started off early trying to unpack this thing together. And I know Steve mentioned a lot of myths and mysteries at the start of it. And I think we went through that and been through the pains of scaling it within that organization. And I'd like to think that we at that institutionalized phase and really embedded it across the group. So yeah, happy to share these scars, happy to share some of our achievements, and hopefully this forum, can be kind of a really collaborative session for everyone.
I realize I haven't introduced myself before we get going. My name is Johan Stein. I work for PwC, recently started there as a lead architect automation, also involved with the Institute of Computer Professionals of South Africa, where I look at AI and robotics. And I must just punt this, I write weekly in Business Day now. So on every Wednesday, go buy your paper and read my 2 cents worth. But anyways, so let's start with the discussion. The perception I have, guys, is that, and from people, not us who work in this field, from others out there, maybe business leaders, business owners, that the perception is to a large extent RPA has failed us, where it has not worked, or it definitely has not delivered on the hype and the promises or on the business case. We know there are various reasons, and it's not necessarily the technology's fault. But Andre, let me start with you. Broadly speaking, do you think I'm right in thinking there is a negative view on RPA, especially in our market, or am I wrong?
Well, if I talk from a Nedbank context, certainly in the beginning there was this negative connotation. Bots taking over people's jobs. Almost I almost want to use a strong word, almost sabotage. In certain cases that was almost happening at the very beginning. I'll say in the Nedbank context, it's definitely not negative. It's more positive. In fact, business want more now. And I suppose it's the way you are in your journey. Obviously, we have matured over time. I think it's also good to almost showcase some of these organizations that have been on this journey a stretch of time now, because there's ups and downs in the journey itself, and we've certainly been through some of those challenges. We're having some major incidents where all your bots are not working, and people questioning, is this the right technology to be using, and the like. But in saying that, there's almost now in the Nedbank context, I can't do without this digital workforce, and I want more of it, and I want them to be more skillful. And that's, I think, the evolution. If you look at all these, I've seen dozens of presentations with the journey that one travels around the automation, maturity map. And for me, depending on where you are, it makes for the journey to be what it is. You've got to live some of these things. Hopefully, you can live some of the negative episodes in a short space of time, and moved into the more positive ones and stay there for a much longer period. So, I think, certainly from a financial perspective, I think there's certainly, I think, a positivity around it. We are part of the top 3 strategic agenda points from a technology perspective in the bank as it stands now. So certainly it's got that gravitas. I think people understand more. I think the times we're living in now, with the pandemic, I think it's just brought you to the fore a little bit more so, which is a good and a bad thing in a sense. But for me, I think personally, I think it's definitely positive. But certainly along the journey, there's been times where I thought, is this the right place to be? Because sometimes you have those days. Ironically enough, today, guys, I'm touching wood now, but I've seen no terminations of my bots this morning. It's very rare, but it's happened today.
That's good. Sure. Kashil, general perception out there on RPA, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, Andre raises some good points, and I think the first part is adoption. And very early on in our kind of starting the capability, I think you alluded to a few points there. We often ran into the cynics versus the healthy skeptics, or yeah, and I think within the IT community, especially where we were structured in the business, we fundamentally placed our capability next to the business problems in the servicing environment. And so naturally, we had IT looking at service saying, okay, let's see this work. And service saying, well, we submit our demand. There's an over demand and under supply in conventional solution delivery. We want to start our own capability. We want to be a little bit more agile. And so there was always going to be, those healthy skeptics, but cynics. And maybe we need to kind of distinguish between those two. And that really did drive that adoption mindset, especially in the early stages of us setting up. And then you get to the business perspective of it. And I think Andre alluded to sabotage, because it is what it is. And the narrative around automation does mean redundancy, maybe not people redundancy, but task redundancy. And you can read that in any way you want. But we did purposefully, very deliberately try and create the right narrative around that, and looking at our business position, how could we move people into different roles so that we used automation as an augmentation to the labor versus giving it to the people or doing it to the people. And then it also unlocked other parts of our business, allowed us to really experiment with service models, bring first contact resolution into kind of more the front office tasks. So in that way, yes, there's been a lot of adoption challenges very early on. One from even gathering requirements, and someone call it like the turkeys voting for Christmas almost. And how many scenarios am I willing to show the analyst? And it was a challenge around then. I think we fast forwarded, and the amount of benefit that we have delivered has kind of vanquished all of those kind of negative connotations of it. The fact that we've been able to successfully deliver at scale and also kind of really influence how service models are designed, I think has been a huge benefit for us and has changed that negative connotation. But there is still that underlying notion of benefits realization that I think it's in the subsequent part in the discussion, but how do you drive benefits? And as an automation capability, it's theoretical for us. We automating tasks, we automating volumes of transactions, but we're not realizing the theoretical minutes. And it's a really good collaboration with business to say, well, this month we automated this much. How do we offset that in the business? And obviously, naturally, there's going to be apprehension for that. And that's been some of the underlying notion that's come across. I think the context of where we are now, it's become a no-brainer of why we need to start going automation and digitization in particular. And what robotics has done is almost become that enabler that straddles, and exactly its premise is straddling that heritage legacy applications with these new modern apps. And as we're moving into that digitized world, I think robotics is forcing itself into, playing its part as this tier 2 administrator, as playing the kind of interface between all these applications. And from an IT and business perspective, it's getting more and more traction. I think that's evident in some of our forecasted plans, but there's always going to be that business apprehension towards it. And it's about how you manage that narrative and how you support business and do it with them rather than kind of do it onto them.
I think you raised such an important point. I think a lot of people work as technologists and platform people, and the business context and you've touched on benefits realization, which is actually my next question. Even though we're a bunch of automation techies, I think where it falls flat is not speaking business language, not letting business, because they don't care what's it called and what platform you're using. I think they want to see the benefit. So Andre, I want to ask you about business realization or value realization with the Netbank. Was that like a slow start and a struggle, and then did it pivot, or what was that journey like for you guys?
No, yeah, certainly in the beginning, it's how do you quantify the benefit of RPA? And I think also coupled with that was, how do you almost quantify the cost of the actual function that does the job itself? we pondered on that financial model for at least a year, 18 months, to get that right, because at the end of the day, RPA was punted as, return on investment, within a 3 to 4, 5 month horizon. So, certainly the team and how you make that team up and how you cost it back into the business becomes quite key for them to actually build their business case upon. On the business case side, the benefits, there's various metrics. And maybe let me just touch on just the Nedbank, state of the nation, if I can call it. We are very close to, I think, just under 200 bot solutions that we built, but across about around 300 digital workers. And that number's stayed flat for this year, the 300 digital workers. And I think that's quite an important number to touch on. So if you look at it from my perspective, I'm in the movie of total cost of ownership now. I don't want to be sitting here in the next probably 18, 24 months and having 600 digital workers on my bot farm. It's more infrastructure, it's more maintenance, it's a whole bunch of effort, and my team is staying the same. And I think for me, the total cost of ownership is got to be a key metric that you see, either staying flat or going down over time. It's all about how do you make them more productive at that point in time. On the business side of things, there's various metrics we use. Kushil touched on a few right now, but not all your RPA use cases are going to yield you positive NPV. I think there's tangible and intangible benefits. Some of them are even political, if I'm quite frank. I've got a few real doozies in my space. They still run, but, it was more politically driven than anything else. There's a few cases that really carry the whole of the enterprise, in a sense. So, we've got a few flagship processes that are really, business can't do without it. I think I mentioned it before, the one debit order reversal assistant. It's reversing debit orders via our Nedbank Money app. The service level agreement it must be done within 2 hours. And at month end, we have close to 20,000 reversals of debit orders. And we've got a team of 40 bot workers, 40 Doras, we call them, that actually do the work. And if Dora ain't running, I've got a big problem on my hand. So for me, I think, it's caveated. We've got various metrics. And being a federated model, so the clusters, they manage this. They manage from inception, the feasibility, the viability of the business case. They build the bots, they maintain the bots. So it's very much a DevOps type, new ways of work mentality. And for me, it's, there's cost to income ratio of the bot, which is, quite a cool metric. You can show that versus, the normal workforce. Obviously, time saved, if there is a FTE saving, that is well. But I think, what the CFOs do on their side, specifically in retail and business bank, is that they take the time hours and they push it back into like a sales target. So, I'm going to save you back 1,000 hours. So you've got 1,000 more hours to actually go and do sales. And that's the reality of it. Kushil even touched on it. The reality is you don't get these golden nuggets where you've got a team just doing day in and day out one specific activity and then you want to automate that function. The reality of the matter is that you're automating processes, you're augmenting that specific function with the digital workforce, and they've got other stuff to do. And now they're actually getting to that stuff. So, at the end of the day, it's, for me, quite frankly, right now, even quite an important metric, even though it's not a return on investment, is this managing the performance and the operational efficiency of how many bots are not running. It's quite a key. And when you get bigger, these types of things start to keep you up at night. So that's something you really want to keep flat, whilst you grow. So I think it's different in each organization. However, in my space now, I'm trying to kind of just roll up and bring an enterprise view. I've got stats that say how many cases we do on a monthly basis and all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like we got to tell the story a little bit better. Because I think, where we're going as well, like Kushil mentioned, they're a little bit ahead of us, is about, connecting now with machine learning, cognitive services, and making the workforce more intelligent. For me, it's about making the workforce more productive and making them more intelligent now, because I don't want to grow that base. I actually want to get more out of these 300 digital workers that I have currently, and actually, keep growing from a demand perspective, but make sure this workforce is really, very productive, 70 to 80% productive.
Andre, I want to ask you both. I'm going to start with you. I mean, you mentioned the amount of bots, the amount of digital workers, the amount of effort to keep them up and running. We read a lot about a bot for every person, kind of in kind of the media and the Gartner reports and whatever we read. Do you think, is that realistic? And even if we just say back office workers, not everyone in the enterprise, what do you think?
Yeah, well, right now I would say not. It's a nice utopia in a sense to have. The whole organization needs to shift with understanding RPA. Right now where we stand, people understand when we say a Blue Prism bot, they know what that means. They've seen how it works, to a large extent. It's got to be so, if you think about it, if you have a personal bot, that you can call on, to do certain mundane tasks, and we all know bots need good input to do the work the first time around 100%. So, it's for me, I think personally, I think it's, it's a utopia at this point in time. I think, people themselves at every level need to be comfortable with bots and what they can do for you and how they work with you. And I don't think we're there just yet. And it's a maturity thing for me. And I think also, you gotta, if you just think about it, and I'm putting on my technical hat now, a bot and everybody's, at everybody's disposal. I can just imagine the nightmare in terms of managing that from a technology perspective, infrastructure. Oh, my bot's down. Never mind your VDI goes down. Now your bot's going down. So for me, I think, all of those things with measurement, that if you want to implement, and there's got to be a good case for it. It's the case has to be very sound as to why the organization would benefit from having this type of bot per individual scenario, in my opinion. And in our space, there's individuals that service customers. You're not always gonna want to do things with a bot, by example. And I think that it's par for the course. So maybe specific business cases or units that may need it, but for me, yeah, I think it's a bit of a utopia for now.
Okay, Kashil, what would you say?
So when you say one bot, one person, do you mean how a business views the benefits, or do you mean what Andre mentioned, personal assistant bot?
Yeah, I think the latter. So
sure.
Yeah.
The former is an interesting one, and it links to the first question you asked around benefits realization, and also linked to that first notion of robotics and the value of it. Because for us, I'm trying to drive utilization as a metric. I think that highlights and puts the right pressure on business to say how best are they using their bots. It puts the right pressure on IT to say, are my underlying applications available to enable and maximize the utilization of the bots? Much like Andre tried to stay flat as much as possible. The utopia world of personal bots or virtual assistants. One, I mean, from an unattended automation perspective, we know where we fall short in terms of providing that kind of service, where you want that human in the loop kind of thing. And I think Steve alluded to a few applications that serve as that. So from our perspective, we have not thought about that utopia world of per bot per person. Like Andre mentioned, it's specific for certain functions. We have explored use cases where we think we can leverage this type of virtual assistant world. But like Andre mentioned, I think that is a very far out future for us. That being said, we are trying to complement our stack with components that can enable this. You start thinking about Flow or Power Automate, and where you enable that citizen automation specialist with low code tasks. I haven't thought about the infrastructure and management overhead of that, and perhaps in these new licensing models and the new ways that they're deploying these kind of flow patterns to people's desktops. I don't necessarily know what the impact from a central COE management capability perspective. I think it's quite important to note that we started centralized, and it made sense for us to go centralized. We are fully kind of project recovery team, so we're not pre-funded at all. We drive internal work or demand and kind of function like an internal consultancy. But we are moving into this federated model and trying to create those satellite centers of excellence. And I think an evolution of that would then be, how then do we put automation tools in the hands of specific areas where it makes sense? You think group tax, you think group compliance, you don't necessarily think back office servicing functions to have virtual assistants like that. Maybe in the case of front office workers, but I think there are some fundamental challenges that we are trying to resolve from some of our contact points before we can start thinking about that virtual assistant.
Okay. I see Ati made an interesting comment here in the chat. There is a business case for personal attended bots, and I think that could be a very interesting conversation in the groups that we are going to soon. I've got one last question, and then we're going to take a comfort break. Andre, I want to start with you. If you could start all over again, having learned what you have learned, what would you have done differently?
Sure. Well, I think, just reflecting on my journey, I think, we took an approach of multi-vendor. There was so much of demand. There was so much of hype. I had to go the multi-vendor approach. If I had to reflect back now, I actually would have changed that narrative and actually went a bit more slower. I would have probably have invested more heavily in growing a team within the Nedbank construct from the beginning, and not get consultants on and then start. I think we've benefited from that now. We've flipped the switch in a sense. We do have a few partners, but we're very selective about the partners that we have now. And I also think, depending on where you are, the strategic driver of RPA needs to be quite focused. You need to understand what's driving, why would you use, or what's the underlying driver behind introducing RPA. And in our space, it was more around, let's introduce RPA as tactical measure so that strategic projects can do what they need to do, and once they're online, then you can essentially then retire your bot estate or your bot process for that specific. And that pattern still has stayed throughout the 4-year journey that we've been on. I think that depending on that specific driver, so it'll allow you to understand how you need to set up. And I think you've got to have scale in mind in the beginning, because I think everybody wants to have a sizable number of digital workers. You got to have that mindset of scale in the beginning. I had multi-vendors on board. Everybody thought their standards was the best thing since sliced bread. So I had 4 different business areas, that had their own portfolio of consultants. And the code was, not standardized in a sense from a coding perspective. And I think standards become very important, and not only standards of the code, standards of how you set up your VMs, the image that you use, etc., because once you start to scale, all of those things, if they're not in place, you're going to have to go and fix those things before you can start to scale. And I think I would immediately have a mindset of scale right at the very beginning. It may be more painful to kind of get people to adopt that way, but I think it'll in the long run it will just benefit you almost tenfold. And I think if you are going to get partners, I think get partners that not only know how to build bots, but technically understand the platform, understand the architecture, understand the constraints of it. So we did a technical assessment with Steve and the guys, I think a couple of years ago now, and we did have one with Blue Prism prior to that. But that really gave us the starting point to say, this is what's wrong, these are the gaps, go and fix them. So but if you start with the right footing, you and an architect, and get architecture on board in terms of how you architect your platform, then you don't sit with these problems downstream. And I think probably those things, I think change management, you can always do it better, but that's par for the course. But I think those things that really resonated with me.
Okay, wow. A lot said there, and it's interesting always to look back, and that's where the scars come from. I guess, Andre, Kushil, if you could look back and start over.
Yeah, maybe, a few things. So fortunately, we started centralized. We started small, and we started with a single partner, really try to embed some of those best practices before we look to federate. So from that context, I think we got that right. But I think, like Andre mentioned, I think thinking scale at the start, and from an infrastructure perspective, from a team capacity perspective, and defining these roles clearly in the role libraries and in the organization, not just to develop that internal core team and pipeline talent, but also to kind of from a technical perspective, our challenge has been pretty much around infrastructure and scaling, and we've gotten our ways around it. But had we spent that time at the early phases of clearly understanding what is the ambition here, yes, our strategic prerogative was centered on efficiencies and driving efficiencies in the business to unlock more strategic projects, like Andre mentioned. But it was as how fast could we prove the technology, but at the same time think about the scale, which is a really difficult thing to balance. And perhaps it's the way the use cases are selected. Perhaps it's the team that you onboard very early on. For us, like I mentioned at the start, we started primarily as non-IT people, 7 engineers in servicing that drove the RFP, that drove the business casing, that started the training, that then partnered with other parts of the business, and then slowly got IT to become part of our central core team. So we pulled IT kind of closer to us, but after we've set up and created that kind of awareness, I think that would have really helped us if we really got IT on board as soon as we possibly could. Yes, I like the mindset of getting non-conventional IT specialists to start a capability like this, and I think it's been a huge driver for our success. But I think that foresight that IT leads and IT specialists would have brought at the onset would have really helped in terms of some of the challenges we're facing now. So thinking scale at the beginning is probably where I would really consider, but at the same time trying to prove this technology, and maybe there's certain use cases that can drive that in the short possible time. I think the team that you start out with is really also really important. It's people that think differently about conventional systems development lifecycle, people that think differently about how to test robotics and how to overcome incongruencies in environments, and that's a huge challenge for us and something that IT could have assisted us with. And at the onset, it had to justify investment to get parity across our environments, but that would have made that discussion more prominent in the business, which potentially could have unlocked more for other projects. So for us, it was think scale at the beginning, get IT involved as soon as you possibly can, unpack your challenges that you can foresee with robotics, environment changes, access to test data, SME availability. Those are the key things that I would want to create the awareness right up front, having known what I know now. And then also the business adoption part. I think, Andre, you mentioned change management. It took us a while to get that right. We eventually created a video to demystify what robotics was. But I think that change management, even prior thinking about robotics, would have probably been something that I would have changed.
It's not long before we're done. I know it's Friday. I know it's almost 10 o'clock. What we're going to do next is I'm going to ask the facilitators of the different groups or anyone from the different groups to just give a 2-minute feedback, and we're going to keep it short to 2 minutes. Just what the group discussion was about and what you got out of it. So whoever would like to come onto screen first and speak about one of the first groups. Otherwise, I'll have to do it, but I'll wait for last. Who would like to volunteer?
Okay, I could start. I think we had a theme around, firstly, we blamed consultants.
Thank you.
That there were preconceived ideas with a lot of us when we started the initiative of RPA, the fast implementation, fast ROI, you don't need IT type of thing. And at the end of the day, we all had to do culture changes and getting the executives and business to unlearn what they were promised, because it made us all look like we're failures. But at the end of the day, there were preconceived ideas that were set before we actually had joined the sessions. I think what also becomes important is that our learnings from an ownership perspective, that the more business is closer to the technology, the ownership becomes a mutual beneficial situation where when the bots fail, it doesn't become a technology issue, it becomes both the business and the technology issue, that the sooner we would have had that ownership in hand, it would have been less burdensome on the COE to get buy-in from the business. And one of the comments that we made was that a fool with the tool is still a fool. So let's not just implement for the sake of implementing broken processes. There's that whole end-to-end analysis and understanding business strategy as to why are we doing this? Because it can't just be an FTE reduction exercise, because we all agreed that there's nobody in the forum that's in the business of selling headcount. Therefore, less headcount is a means of success. So that quantification and merging RPA into the strategy is something that we see as a big value going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ati. That's valuable. Who would like to come on screen next to speak on behalf of one of the other groups? Otherwise, what I'll do for now is I will go for our group. This is all the notes I made. Don't look at my handwriting. I could have been a doctor. I think it was a lively discussion. It's interesting. We've had evangelists from both Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere in our same group, which was always an interesting conversation. We spoke, I'm just going to touch on this. We spoke about the value in looking at the second tier organizations, not just the big enterprises when it comes to this technology. We spoke about automating business functions and not just automating processes, which I think is a very important point. We spoke about customer value and always taking it from how do you take this kind of technology from the back office to the front office, where customers can actually see the value of what process automation can do for them. Spoke about the value of RPA in the public sector space, which I think is really an important point. Contact centers, again, back to customers. Also touched on return on investment and the business case, which is sometimes difficult. Where to start in your journey, maybe finance and accounting functions, and again, back to customers. We spoke about the UX designers maybe working with RPA and automation team. So, and a lot more, but I'll stop there for now. It was very valuable, I think.
Yeah, hi. I think we had two, ends of the journey. We had Candace, who's embarking on the journey with a very ambitious transformational agenda at MassSmart, and the whole road ahead of her, and so talking really much as we did in the group discussion in the beginning. What are those lessons learned? What are the things you need to consider when setting out on the journey? The concept of thinking big, starting small and scaling fast, and those big critical success factors: executive sponsorship at the right level, understanding the outcomes that you seek from automation, and critically what it can do and what it cannot do. Avoiding that temptation that this is the next silver bullet to deliver on your strategic objectives, and that business is going to sit back and this automation team is going to come and bring salvation down upon us. The criticality of partnerships between the business operations, IT, and the automation team, and really being very, very clear on the business outcomes that you seek. Yes, you can use benefits and costs to help build your business case, but think about business outcomes beyond rands and cents and FTEs in terms of the outcomes that you seek, and track those and measure those and play those back to the business constantly. And then I guess at the other end of the spectrum, we spoke about the Kushil's Vodacom and Old Mutual, the guys that have been in there for years and years, who've matured through their journey, and the lessons learned there, and recognition of the brittleness of automation, and what are the strategies to avoid non-productive bots, all of the pitfalls around system unavailability and bots sitting around waiting, the weakness of working through GUIs, and strategies, to avoid that, working with APIs and connectors to build productive bots and get the most the most out of them. So, discussion on both ends of the spectrum there in terms of the journey and recognizing that there's a maturity that one needs to go through. But certainly for those starting the journey, you can jumpstart with lessons learned from those with experience.
Okay, Evan, thank you. Valuable. Last group, I think it might be Andre or Nanel. Who can we call on?
Yeah, so I think we jumped quite a lot in the conversation, but we spoke about like daily operational issues that one would have. Like I think one of the attendees spoke about being currently in UAT and they want to take it to production, but production is down, and the focus on the application team is to sort out production. I suppose, in the traditional sense of the life cycle, one wants to adopt using RPA. I think there's some mindset changes that would need to take place with all those teams involved, the change and release team, the governance team, and your design authority. It's not the one size fits all from an RPA perspective. Essentially you're adding a digital worker into the system. I spent many conversations convincing application owners that I'm not going to break their system or even change their system in production. All I'm going to do is use it. So that's what we spoke about initially. We touched on, I think Madeline spoke about the small players and how you manage them now. If you have to restart from now, I think there's a good strategy in place where, as vendors out there, you can help customers start their journey as a managed service capability in the beginning, and once they got about 4 or 5 or 6 bots in place, that transition into creating their own COE can be more measured and more less pressurizing in a sense, because they would have got some appreciation for what it takes to run those specific first few bots that they have in place. I thought that was a pretty good strategy. Also a question around, what's the expectation on businesses side? How do you engage them? What do you actually connect to them in terms of automation? I think it was, I tried to just put across that, business must understand what they get from bots and what they don't get from bots. I threw an example in the NetBank space where, unfortunately, one of the consultants had thrown that, the bot's going to solve world hunger. It's going to do everything. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So I suppose when business starts to understand that, what it can do, what it can't do, they must also understand that it's their digital worker. It's not, although IT is involved, they mustn't perceive this or see it purely as an IT system that has gone down in a sense. The bot is very much part of their business function and they need to manage it. And I think that's something that we try to push across in the NetBank construct. If your bot's down, yes, we are aware of it from an IT perspective, but maybe it's down because it couldn't fetch a control file that it needed to fetch in the first place. So also around how you tag your exceptions. How do you manage exception management in the process? So I spoke about adopting some exception management standards. I think it's quite important because if you classify your exceptions, I think it gets more manageable. What's a business exception where you don't really need to be too worried about, but where there are system exceptions, you can start to build, there's a massive amount of data one gathers over time around that. So, where we are is, I'm looking to see how I can apply some algorithms to this data to see whether or not it will tell me some insights, when bots are going to potentially go down, etc., etc. It's like I said, at scale, you feel that systems are more slower or bots are performing more slower at month end. These are the type of things you'll pick up as you go along. I think there was a question also around how does one integrate into Azure cognitive services, or into cognitive services and NLP and all of those good stuff. There's the devil's in the detail. So, and all functions need to be involved. And I threw an example of InfoSec again about, how we onboard a bot into Azure, by example. I've been like 5 to 6 months down this road with InfoSec already in this regard. But these are important discussions to have now, because when you want to scale, you don't want this to become a problem. So that's just one example. And I think coupled with that, depending on the size of organization that you are, look at all the other tech that you have available that can complement your RPA stack, and see if you can already build that bridge or integration into those stacks if it's going to be cost effective on your side. And at the end of the day, it's the value proposition is always return on investment in a short space of time. And I suppose you got to weigh that up. If it's going to work for you, then I think go down the route. But if it's not going to work for you, then I think push for the features that are available on the stacks, the software house stacks that you can use, so that you can give business that value and that experience that they want.
Sure. So much that came out of this session. I hope everyone has found it valuable and that you're going to connect with each other on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Andre, thanks for that. Thank you, everyone. I hope it was valuable, and we look forward to communicating with you and seeing you at our next event. And I hope you have a great Friday and a great weekend.